South Africa chairs the G20 at a time when the US is preparing itself for a full frontal attack on multilateralism generally.
The president, now he's basically called on NEC members to say, hey, tell me if I should resign. What's happening there and how true is that?
Basically, criminals have found it easier to cut out the middleman and just simply influence politics directly. The ANC losing an election, which it did in 2024, has not made any dent on the internal quest for power.
These planes that have been landing at Ora Tambo
Yeah.
from Palestine, what's the chat there?
Okay, let's do this.
Welcome back to Palatable Politics, where we make politics palatable. With me, your host, TJ Maslela. Welcome to the show. Today we're going to be discussing G20, B20, South African politics, and a few of the current affairs. Our guest, Miss or Mrs.?
Girl, we South Africans, it's always Miss.
Wow. Qaanitah Hunter. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. I really enjoyed our last chat and I'm happy to be here.
Likewise, which is also why we've welcomed you back. In your time away, one of the things you've done is authored another book.
Right.
Why Am I Like This?
Yes.
Can you walk us through that?
It has nothing to do with politics.
Yeah.
It is the most off-brand thing I could have ever done in my life. I wrote fiction. I took time off and I went and explored fiction and fiction writing and told a story of grief, of identity, of what it's like to be South African, and put it out in the world, and then came back to the political storm that exists, that is South Africa.
And it is always a storm.
No, it's always a storm.
Always a storm.
I was doing rewrites I was out of the country doing rewrites when the Mkonazi press conference happened.
Rewrites?
Of the book.
Okay.
So you know, it's a process. You write and then you submit. And so I was away, and then I'm like, I log on to Twitter and I was like, oh, there's a briefing. Oh, there's a general wearing camouflage. Okay, let's watch.
So when you saw that, fine, you were shocked. It's South Africa.
Yeah.
And then what's your make of everything that's been happening around Mkonazi so far?
TJ, I'm a yapper. I have an opinion on every single thing. I have purposely stayed away from having a public opinion on Mkonazi. I'll tell you why. I have been covering the criminal justice system since I started as a journalist, 2011, right? These actors...
Jeez, didn't know time had flown like that. Okay.
I'm a granny. These actors have been in different phases. Like, I still remember the rebellion of when Ramaphosa, when Jacob Zuma did not make Mkonazi the national commissioner and then found Ria Piecha from outside the police service. Like, I still remember that time, right? And so there is this nasty confluence of politics, organized crime, and the criminal justice system. This is what we wrote about in the 8 Days of July, why the July unrest happened in 2021. It's that intersection, right? We've been screaming from the top of our lungs about reform in this space, about how... Let me rephrase this, right? Why should we care who pays for tables at an ANC conference, at an ANC gala dinner? For 15 years, we've been screaming and shouting to say that political donations, basically criminals, have found it easier to cut out the middleman and just simply influence politics directly, right? And so the accusations of Mkonazi was a neatly packaged symptom to what we've been writing and talking about for a very, very, very long time. Money, politics, the fact that if you are a tenderpreneur it's your business case to have political fixes on retainer, if you like. It's organized. It's systematic.
It's an economy of its own.
It's an economy of its own. I wrote years ago about what's called the economy of conferences, where people pay off houses, right? And so what happens when a thing like Mkhwanazi, the press conference where he exposes this intersection, you are tempted as a human being to fall into a line that says hero versus villain versus hero. These are the heroes and these are the villains. These are the saviors. Remember, that was the prism that we had every time when the Ramaphosa administration began, when there was reforms announced then of like, oh, these are the bad guys, right? I remember this happening at the State Security Agency, where it was like, and remember, these are all part of the same cancerous fabric of our state entities, right? And so it's not one day in 2025 they've made this revelation that politicians and criminals and political fixers are all working in cahoots. I'm saying what gets leaked and what comes out, it depends on a factional fight and a power struggle internally, and based on the politics of the day. And so that's why, what is that thing that the kids say, like, situlenje siyabuga, like you watch it out, because it's indicative of such cancer. And you can't sit there and say, no, this cell is not affected by the cancer. No, this is the what, I don't know the medical terms, but at the end of the day, you have to get a complete picture to make the diagnosis. You can't make the diagnosis with half a scan.
In what you've said, and rewinding a bit, I would take one of the major issues is the funding of political parties. That the way it is now, it almost makes political parties dependent on businesses for them to raise their funds. How do you think we could address that to separate whether it is tenderpreneurs having this economy of funding political parties or having to do shady things and therefore infiltrate a democracy, etc.? How do we deal with it?
I think that's like a 15-year-old conversation. That's a pre-Gupta conversation. I think it's much worse than that. I think that, like, because political entities have to go and ask business for money and therefore it influences, like, that's a conversation that we needed to have 10 and 15 years ago, right?
Okay.
It was the subject of the State Capture Commission. Justice Zondo wrote endlessly on it, right? Where we are now is long beyond that. Nothing can fix that. Like even if the politicians get their way and that political party activity is fully funded from the state, which is a bad idea. We don't have the money for it. But I'm saying, say that was the case, and there was the convergence of political power and criminal interest is too far gone in this country. So there's no pretense anymore. What was state capture, right? State capture was, I wanted a tender, right? I wanted a tender. Premier X was in charge of this department. I had favor with him. I then ingratiated myself with Premier X, who then advised an official to give me the tender, and Premier X's son got a deal or two from me. That's your old school, clean, neat corruption. Right?
Okay.
What you have now is sinister in the sense that I, as a criminal enterprise, right, I will get a mayor elected, a mayor that works for my enterprise. I will get him elected. And then I will destroy public infrastructure, and I will guarantee that every single water truck tender, that pipeline is completely owned by me. And so, tenderpreneurs, remember, so so there was a power balance in the sense that the 10 entrepreneur goes cap in hand with some cash to the politician who, you understand the corruption dynamic. Now it's, I don't need any middleman. I own the entire ecosystem of state procurement. And as a result, it's the cost of business. Funding politicians and their excessive lifestyles is the cost of doing business.
With that said, going into the local government election next year, our candidates, especially mayoral candidates, are likely to be business decisions, essentially. That the person put forward was most likely that person that was able to raise funds through businesses to be...
Who has the most money to run a formidable campaign.
And once they get it, obviously they need to pay back.
But that's like a global phenomenon, right? That's the conversation in the US in terms of who owns politics, right? The conversation around APAC. So I'm not even having that fundamental conversation around the intersection of business and politics. I think this is a society that messiness exists, right? And there's no such thing as a free dinner, right? So for me, I understand that bit. The part that I think is hectic is the crassness of the criminal enterprise basically owning political appointees. And that's a very different thing. And then the second part of it, when you talk about local government elections, is that we've seen a monkey see, monkey do phenomenon in coalition governments. That coalitions was meant to be the guardrails, that no one has absolute power, so no one loots because everyone's watching the next person. Has that been the case? Of course not. Why? It's because I just need to get in so then I can guarantee the pipeline for my next re-election, which will be a bit more. You understand? So if you are a 10,000 seat party, you need that political power that a coalition offers you, because you actually need to get some tap that opens up for you so that you can ensure to buy a bigger slice of the political pie in the next round. So we've seen the opposite. And it's just a cycle. So it's not a thing of, if you like, it's essentially what coalition politics has opened us up to, especially on a local level, is that if you can't beat him, join him. Right? So it's a small thing that says, in a municipality, and that's the interesting bit about this government, this upcoming election, is that opposition parties who are going to run against the ANC are also incumbents in certain areas.
Some with the ANC.
And they're not treated as such. And they're not held accountable. Okay. The EFF is not held accountable for what's been done and not done in Rustenburg. But it holds political power there. It holds political power in the city of Joburg, whatever. You know, ATM, you can name them. And so, for me, when we talk about, in fact, local government is if you ask me what keeps me up at night about South Africa, I think that's like the closest thing for me to be like, this is too much, because I've seen it, I've studied it, I've covered local politics for 15 years, right? And you see, look at the Auditor General reports, and you'll see that slide of just like, we don't actually care. And not only we don't actually care, is that the entire fiscal ecosystem of a local government is subservient to the political faction that's in charge.
How do we fix it?
I think that, let me answer like a politician. I used to think that the fish rots from the head, so the head is important, right? I think that political will has always been the thing that I argued will solve any of these issues. If you look at load shedding, the only thing that solved it was a political will construct, right?
Okay.
So there has to be a political will, whether you're talking about the Mkhwanazi allegations in the criminal justice system, whether you're talking about local government, there has to be a political will to overhaul a system, to not let it be on autopilot, and then from then onwards. So basically, if the cancer is too deep, you have to go to the beginning and say, right, we go back all the way to the Local Government Act of 2000, and we start from there. Our municipality is viable. How are the sharing of power? How are municipalities funded? You obviously are going to have this problem with municipal debt and all of this thing, because like what I'm saying is that an election, a change in leadership, is not going to change your woes on a local level, and that there needs to be a complete overhaul of the architecture of it. Similarly, I made the case when it comes to coalition politics is to say that it doesn't matter who's in charge and who. We in Joburg live that you need an overhaul of the entire architecture of coalition politics, in the sense of NFP is threatening to pull out of a government and basically change the government in KwaZulu-Natal. That must not even be possible in legislation, in the sense that you need to have thresholds. If a party has less than 2%, they cannot be represented in a legislature. I'm just saying, so no one wants to do the uncomfortable work of it's. Think about it. Name an area, right? Name an area. The criminal justice system, local government, whatever. Has it gotten better or worse in the last 8 to 10 years?
Has gotten worse.
Right. So essentially,
Well, majority of them have gotten worse. But okay, yeah, fine. Continue.
no. Okay. Give me a green shoot.
I think ESCOM.
No, but ESCOM got worse, and then it
got
was
better.
it was a functioning of reversing of, like, you went off the cliff, and now we must clap because you reversed back up. Like,
Okay, fine. Okay.
I'm saying,
Yeah.
it's a reform subject to your own failures. It's like you failed the test, and then you studied, and then you passed the test. You failed the test. So the point that I'm making is that the unsexy bits of politics is that we have to have conversations beyond the reaction, beyond the headlines, beyond the what's really trendy at the time, because we get used to that, right? Someone says this, someone says that. And that's why, going back to my first point, the Mkhwanazi allegations of listening to Bheki Cele, of listening to Senzo Mgunu, of today listening to Brown Mokhotsi going on like a crazy person. But to understand that this is all symptoms. What is actually the disease?
No, I agree with you, because I mean, part of it, so fine, we must wait for the outcomes of these commissions around Mkhwanazi allegations. But I mean, one looks at, and we had this Zondo, and President says, 48% of recommendations have been implemented. But it's like, okay, for 48%, is there will that you also get the Auditor General?
But let's do this. Why spend R1 billion on probing something, right?
Okay.
You have one objective, that it never happens again.
Yes.
That's why else do it.
Yeah.
That there has to be one. You went through the unnecessary, expensive exercise of probing and diagnosing is so that you don't want the cancer to grow back, right? Has corruption objectively gotten worse or better?
It's gotten worse.
Right. So you can talk about any reform. Tembisa, after a R1 billion spent in the Zondo Commission and all of these recommendations in tightening your systems, how does a Tembisa hospital
Because they spent
corruption?
double Zondo money on Tembisa.
No, that's exactly that's the story.
point. Yeah.
After we've had this whole picture painted on how the state is vulnerable to capture, and then it happens times worse. Nah, fam. So you understand my point, is that it's not. I'm not disputing that there are reforms, but It's like this. It's the cancer patient say, yeah, but I went for my walk this morning. My guy, you didn't go for your chemotherapy. The cancer's you did something healthy.
Yes.
But
in one of your earlier answers, you mentioned that the politics of the day is also what determines what comes to light and what doesn't come to light. The president's, what's the power dynamics there? Because now he's basically called on NEC members to say, hey, tell me if I should resign. What's happening there and how true is that? So
I think that the midpoint of any ANC president's career is always a tipping point. It's either where he consolidates power in the first term, or in the second term is where there's the aggressive sort of rearrangement of what comes after him, right? Because it's not actually about what comes after him, it's about the interests that are aligned to him and what happens and how ambitious they are, right? So the timing of it is very predictable. There's an NGC, it's a midpoint, right? It's 3 years now into his second term.
Months,
into his second term, right? So he's already all goods, right? And there is a perpetuating narrative that was behind the scenes for a long time that says this man is not interested in governing. This man actually wants out, and therefore he's not nailing his colors to the mast on any issue, is postponing his way through governance, right? Many years ago, I used the word he quiet quit, but whatever it may be, on the basis that he'll deliver a G20 and then he's out. That was the whispering. But the whispering then became into a lobby that this man must go. And so what the president does now is that he preempts it and says, oh, you want me to go? And takes out an uncomfortable conversation into the public domain to disarm his political opponents, right? Remember, the strength Ramaphosa has had from the 15th or 16th of December 2012 was that he never ever wanted this thing desperately. That was, even though he may have wanted it desperately, but his political prowess was that this man doesn't need this job. And that's what always gave him the out. That's why the Pala scandal happens and he's like, oh, you don't want me, I'll go. And it changes the power dynamic, right? Now,
whereas in Nkandla was, what did I do?
Yes, I have to have this political office by all means, right? And I'm saying facetious or not facetious, that's a different debate. But for me, it's interesting that succession politics in the ANC is still very much predictable. That the ANC losing an election, which it did in 2024, has not made any dent on the internal quest for power. You would think after you lost power that all systems as you knew it had to change, and that the survival of the party is bigger than any one interest and one individual. It doesn't look like that. But on the other hand, those who are pushing for Ramaphosa to leave by the end of the year are making the case to say the country is on autopilot anyways. We are not going to be able to claw back any support in the municipal elections. Get a caretaker president. Let's sort things out, and then whoever emerges. He probably put a spanner in those conversations by pulling it out to the public domain and addressing it head on, because no one wants to be the person. If you're unorganized, so there's a moment of the late Natim Tetwa that's often spoken about in 2005 at the NGC in
2015.
No, 2005 when Zuma
sorry,
was fired by Mbeki for rape, and Natim Tetwa at an NGC in Durban stands up and leads the charge for that decision to be reversed. And then there's this the great comeback of Jacob Zuma at the time, right? So So for that to have happened, there had to have been a groundswell. Now, any opponent of Ramaphosa, there's no groundswell of support. Where does that sit? Even if you want to say in Mashatile or Mbalula, there isn't anyone that can say, I'm going head to head up with the president. Because that's not the politics he plays, right? Think about it. Who even if you say Mashatile is going to go up against him, it's not going to be a head to head confrontation. It's going to be a sort of a side jab here and there.
But if Ramaphosa goes, who comes in?
No, that's not my decision to make. That's not your decision to make. And that's why businesses are super obsessed with that conversation. And I say, why are you caring? This is a party of 1 million people. I don't know if those. I mean, the updated figures. I think it's 700,000, whatever it may be. At the end of the day, that party fights it out. And then it's up to the electorate to decide, with or without your candidate, we going or we not going. And so I'm saying that emotional quotient that the country put to who the ANC president is carries a very different weight in a world where this is a 40% party. So,
right now, it could be less, but yeah.
But so think about it, right? We used to cover regional ANC conferences. I would be sent to Richards Bay because that used to be a massive power block in the KwaZulu-Natal, which is a power block nationally. You understand?
No.
Now, KZN has... what is the interest in understanding internal dynamics? Kill each other or don't kill each other. It's... Like... Think about the obsession with the... Do you know who the regional leader of the IFP is in Joburg? You live in Joburg. That's what I'm saying. That the party has not made that its own adjustment in its mind. That it does not have this absolute grip on politics. Therefore, if you kill each other, you don't kill each other, life moves on.
Now, one of the main points of this conversation, and what people were hoping would be Cyril Ramaphosa's last action, the G20 Summit.
Yeah.
What's the G20 about?
So, I'll tell you what it is and what it isn't. One, it's an important meeting on a diplomatic calendar, right? As is the BRICS Summit, as the AU Summit, it's an import. Why it's particularly important this year for us and for the world is that the G20 was a club of the richest nations in the world that excluded the emerging economies and Africa, right? It used to be ministers of finance and on a ministerial level, coordination among the rich countries. That was changed in 2008 when the global financial crisis happened, to say presidents must talk to each other and they must have this agenda that they're solving these problems. So it's a platform for multilateralism, right? Which means platforms for countries to talk to each other at one time. So not having side conversations. We talk about the same thing all at once. Cool. Okay. Right. It is unthinkable that Africa is not represented there. And so the decision 2 years ago to admit the AU into the G20 was an important decision. And then South Africa gets a chance now, representing the continent, to chair it. And when you chair the G20, you have a say in terms of what is given importance to when it comes to the global world ecosystem, and as well as the economics of the world, right? So when India was chairing it 2 years ago, for them what was really important was reform of multilateral financing institutions. So everyone will have the agenda. South Africa comes in and says, this is a damn big deal that we're chairing it, and we're going to make the most of it. So we're going to be a bit audacious in terms of what our theme is, right? And South Africa has South Africa diplomatically has always been audacious. We've always punched above our weight.
Okay, true.
Think about the World Trade Organization in COVID, what Ramaphosa did with the vaccine patent. We had no... We were stealing PPEs, right? People, like, it was a mess here at home. But diplomatically, we've always had that goodwill to be able to punch above our weight, right? Even under the Zuma years, I'm not saying it's a Ramaphosa exclusive thing. I'm saying South Africa has always been, which is why South Africa's admission to BRICS was a big deal, etc., etc. Now, G20, South Africa gets this chance. It starts in December last year. There's a series of meetings. Basically, South Africa thinks these are the most important conversations. And then it has to facilitate those conversations with representatives from all of these rich countries. Right, cool. It happens. Spanner in the work. Remember, it would have been mundane. It would have been, think about when you've had you can pre-write your article from these multilateral summits before they even happens, because it's so predictable. What happens then is that it forms part, it's just coincidental that South Africa chairs the G20 at a time when the US is preparing itself for a full frontal attack on multilateralism generally. So not on the G20, it's on the entire system. And so South Africa becomes it's the weakest child in the playground. So by beating that child up, then it's a lesson to all the other kids in the playground. And that's what bullies do, right? So from the beginning, right, South Africa asserts itself and says, no, we're talking, the theme of the G20 this year as we chair it is going to be, what is it? Diversity, sustainability, and equality, right?
So solidarity.
Solidarity, yeah. Which is basically, you guys don't want DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. You know, that's a swear word now in the US, right? And in right-wing politics. Yeah. It's like a swear word. Those are swear words. And we'll double down on the need for solidarity, on the need for, in a world where let's give Israel a blank check. Let's penalize anyone that goes up against. South Africa is saying, no, we're going to double down. And so it was the standing up to the classroom bully that made us this target for the entire year, right? And so the participation and the non-participation and the white genocide and the non-white genocide, all of it had one singular objective, was to derail South Africa / the emerging world's seat at the table. The rich kid, you don't want, it's like, it's a classroom. There's a sponsored child, who the poor child got a place. You don't want the poor child in the room. Because the poor child is not being meek and just obliging to everything we say.
The poor child standing up for the continent.
Yes. And that's when it's like, gosh. And there are some very interesting conversations. Let me tell you what has piqued my interest. I've been a nerd about, and I think it's been amazing how South Africa had positioned the issue of Africa's debt crisis. It happened to Kenya, it happened to Ghana, it's unsustainable that we pay so much that most of your budget doesn't go in actually repaying debt. It goes in servicing your debt costs.
Or just servicing, not even repaying it.
Not repaying it.
And this debt is to these G19 countries.
Yeah. These are your Wall Street bankers. These are your Bretton Woods foundations. These are your IMF, your World Banks, right? I'm saying, if Europe goes to FNB, let's not bleep that out. if Europe goes, me as Europe goes to a bank, and you as Africa go to a bank, I ask for 100,000 rand, you ask for 100,000 rand. My repayment is 1 million, your repayment is 200,000. How is that fair?
Because that's designed to keep you...
Yes, completely enslaved to the system. And so what happens then is, you can't just say, oopsie, I'm not paying my loans. You have to say, I'm not going to pay teachers in Kenya, because we have to pay back a loan that's and also often these loans are unnecessary. So I think there has to be a control alt delete. That system must be reset. Debt must be we can't be paying this. Think about it in South Africa. For every 100 rand the government collects, 20 rand is used for servicing debt, not for repaying the debt, just the servicing debt costs. That is insanity. Our debt to GDP, and we're not even the worst in the continent.
Yeah, we're actually pretty
okay. We have a good economy, a good-ish economy in comparison. But I'm saying, so when things like what happened in Ghana happens in Kenya, etc., it's like it's unsustainable, right? So I particularly enjoyed that conversation around the G20, and I'm interested to see how does it reach finality. The second thing is, listen, we can theorize around inequality, but there's something mad, cuckoo, about how wealth is concentrated, has become increasingly concentrated, right? Top 1% owns 50% of the world's wealth. Professor Joseph Stiglitz, who is a Nobel laureate, who was commissioned by Ramaphosa to do a report on inequality, was saying it's an emergency, right? Think about it like this. You have AI and we have rockets going, you could Mars, and you have 2 famines in just 2025 alone. Babies are going hungry. Like in all of this human development and AI and generative AI and all of this, can you understand how bizarre and obscene the world that we live in, right? And so why these conversations are important is because it informs policies. And the policies is what actually changes anything, right? Then the third part that I found quite fascinating for me, which I don't know how far South Africa is going to get on it, is Ramaphosa's initiative to say we must talk about rare earth minerals and we must talk about Africa and the emerging world being seen as sites of extraction and I know these are theoretical conversations around whom Africa must beneficiate, but actually if it's elevated to a level of world leaders, it has to influence policies. It's like, hey, French, hey, Western powers, watch yourself, and then it's just also about the resilience of these multilateral bodies, because I'm of the view, and I could be wildly wrong, is that the UN Security Council, G20, G7, all of it was crafted for a post-World War II environment. And I think that the people it was crafted for, the power brokers that it was crafted for, they have pulled out for it. So I don't know why we, who are on the losing end of it, are fighting for it to remain. But there are lots of people who disagree with me, and I accept the disagreement. I'm saying, why are you fighting to have a seat at the UN Security Council? Why are you fighting to reform something that the people who are the beneficiaries, the bullies there themselves, are like, we don't actually want this anymore? But
because the Security Council, it has like 5 permanent members.
Yeah, and they have veto powers and then
everyone else just gets a chance between the two.
But what I'm told by people I respect who I disagree with is that you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, and there's still a case for a rule-based system. I'm saying, even if that's the case, you got to just reinvent what it is. And I suppose part of creating BRICS was that, to say, let's reimagine multilateralism, and it became at a threat. So the G20 bits, the excitement for the weekend, that's not the G20. That's one of 133 meetings that have 130 has already happened. One is going on. Two will happen this week and then finish this week, and then the Leaders Summit. The second thing is the US absence is quite plainly to say we don't want Africa to succeed.
With that said, because we're supposed to hand over to US.
Yeah.
Even if we have the greatest summit with the best recommendations, one, who we giving it to, but secondly, what are they going to do with it?
Yeah, so that's the question I asked South Africa's Sue Sherpa, Ambassador Xolani Mbongo this morning, where I said to him, like, why are you trying so hard to just, shake the cage when you know what's coming and what's taking? And he says it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like just because you hold the presidency, you can derail the agenda. The fact is, we got these issues at the table. It's not going to just simply disappear. The conversation and the green shoots around Africa debt restructure, and so it's a collective body that is not just. It's not a king that's being anointed, right? So what the decisions made in India only got realized now when South Africa was so it's what they're saying, I suppose, affirms the criticism of the system. It says, like, it's a slow turn, and it talks about talks. So they're affirming it, which is what they get criticism for. But the point is that the fact that we got this far, despite the blocks, despite the efforts to undermine, is already a success story. And everything else is a sideshow. So the question now is whether there's going to be a declaration or not. If there's going to be a declaration, then Ramaphosa says we had a success. If it's going to be a chairperson's remark, which is like a downgraded declaration, they'll also say it's a win and they'll just kind of keep it moving. Automatically, South Africa's presidency lapses at the end of November, and then 1 December the US takes over, and then once they take over, we can figure out how crazy they are or they're not going to be in this forum. Because also, you could just be a lazy chair. You could just not do things with it. There's so many forums, Sometimes South Africa will chair IBSA, for example, and then if you as the head of state is like, I don't want to pay attention to this thing. Cool.
So, fine. We do this, we hand over, whether it's a declaration or the chairman's report. What is the lived reality that we can expect as a result of this G20 summit?
I think that powerful people are now having conversations that were probably a little bit taboo to have, or just they were not mindful enough to have it. So businesses are talking about the disruption of AI. Power brokers are talking about the need for, like I said, beneficiation. There's serious conversations around tariffs. So it's a trickle-down effect that the most powerful in the world are having these conversations. There's other dialogue platforms, like we have the Social Summit that's going to happen, the B20 that's also happening, in kind of figuring out, like, what's the common lived experience globally in terms of the economy, in terms of the global economy. And so you like, for example, if this G20 Leaders Summit adopts the recommendation that there should be a specific panel that deals with inequality, that's going to be a big win. Because remember, there was a time in the world where climate change was not just a universally accepted thing. Okay, now it's been undone, but I'm saying there was a lot of effort to say, gosh, we got to take this thing seriously, and then it influenced policy and it influenced financing, etc., etc.
It trickled down.
But the people, again, who criticize the system say that's the example of how little of a change these forums actually have, because climate change has also only gotten worse. So it's a fine line. For me, the G20 is my Super Bowl. It's my World Cup. It's my Formula One. In the sense that I am enthralled by diplomacy. I'm enthralled by global politics. It's not about what the leaders are going to say. It's the side meetings. It's going to be interesting which African leaders come. Is Egypt in the room? Is Egypt not in the room? These are the things that are like make me excited. But I think for an ordinary South African, it's just like rich people are having a conversation about things that directly or indirectly affect me. I should pay attention to it.
And could you help us understand if it's a Ramaphosa factor, or just chance that you have a BRICS summit followed by a G20 summit, and the next one is the AU that South Africa is chairing?
No, it's a rotational thing.
But to be in that sequence, is this something?
No, it's rotational.
Oh, so
it's purely rotational.
Okay, all right.
It's not a, and in South Africa we by no means fighting for. We should be. I make the case that we should be the bully in the room. This morning I was chatting with some diplomats, and they're like, we have to, we can't be seen to be Big Brother. I'm like, but we are Big Brother, so. But you understand. So I think that, for example, South Africa now took over the chairpersonship of SADC.
Yes.
And it was
SADC, sorry, not EU. SADC,
because of the Madagascar turmoil. Madagascar, rotationally, it went to Madagascar, but Madagascar had a change in power, where they call it a coup, whatever. So now it comes back to South Africa. The point is, South Africa has never, on these global stages, flexed its muscle in a way it could have flexed its muscle. I'm very critical. I think that we should be a bit more front and center and hit things, head on. That's not the style of Ramaphosa, but I do think that the influence that South Africa has is by virtue of just being economic powerhouse in the continent. You know what it is? It's a case of we are all screwed. Who's the least screwed of all of us?
Talking on bullying and that, right? These planes that have been landing at Ora Tambo.
Yeah.
From Palestine. What's the chat there?
Okay, let's do this. Gaza's been bombed. When South Africa went to the ICJ in December, it says, guys, this is not a proportional response. This is genocide. What is genocide? Genocide is an intentional effort to erase a people and a future generation. That we said it, Advocate Adila Hassam said it to the court, that it is a deliberate effort to make Gaza uninhabitable. Report after report after report over the last more than 2 years has confirmed this. Francesca Albanese has confirmed this. They openly say they must all go, right? The right wing in Israel has spelled it out to say there's an end game here to depopulate Gaza so that it
Even in their chance.
Yes. So it's not like some fringe thing. Then it's backed up by developments in politics, where there is a bureau that's set up that basically is trying to promote voluntary exit. So you go and you can't come back, right? This is what happened in the Nakba, right? And so the effort to depopulate Gaza, it's the same reason why when Arab leaders raised concern about what's happening in Gaza, they said, oh, well, why is Egypt not opening? Like, remember there was that whole plan to say all of Gaza must be resettled in the Sinai, in the desert between Egypt and Palestine, occupied Palestine. And so that is the ecosystem that this is happening, that there is a deliberate effort to depopulate Gaza. You destroyed most of the infrastructure, you've killed a lot of people. Now, to actually be successful in your endeavor, you have to get people out. How do you get people out? Is you incentivize it to say you make your life so much hell that they'll go voluntarily. So those who have money, and there are people in Gaza that have money because the banking system has never shut down, they obviously get lured into a thing that says, here, pay to... And there's been lots of attempts. Some people... There are other Palestinians that have come to South Africa for medical treatments. Remember, there was those doctors. So it's not... It kind of... That's the plan, right? Now what happens? These desperate Palestinians get lured online with this company that says, you pay, you're going to be relocated. They think they're going to Indonesia. Somehow they land up in South Africa. They don't know how. They are frazzled, but they are intimidated. Don't speak to anyone. That's the first plane that lands. Once it lands, some of them are in terrible conditions. Some of them are trying to rent houses. It's awful. This happens about 2 weeks ago, more than 2.5 weeks ago. government gets wind of it and they start trying to understand, how did they miss this? Remember, if you're Palestinian, you can get 90-day visa in South Africa, and then you can apply for asylum.
Okay.
You can. No. I'm saying it's visa free.
It's visa.
You can come in visa free for 90 days, and then you have to apply for which. So that's how it's easy for Palestinians to travel here. The same way it's easy for us to travel there in a normal circumstances. So that happens. Our security apparatus is aware of it. There's a kind of a probe that's happening, and there's some assertion to say, hey, this thing is extremely dodgy, and you can't discount the fact that there's a nefarious intent. What then happens is that there's a tip-off that another plane is coming, but that doesn't get escalated to the top. That kind of gets sort of discussed on a mid-level bureaucratic level of, it's a border management agency issue. It's the cops at OR Tambo. When this plane lands, that's how we're going to deal with it, as a purely immigration issue. It's not a purely immigration issue.
It's political.
It's political. And then, so the question is, if you're a nefarious actor, right, as it's being exposed, what is this Al-Majd Europe, the company that they pay this money to, is that South Africa is an easy place to dump Palestinians, in the sense that there's no way in hell we're going to send them back. Second of all, we don't have a policy that asylum seekers are put into refugee camps. We don't have a refugee camp system. You get integrated into society, right?
Is that good or bad?
That's a different conversation.
Okay.
We'll have that conversation, right? But I'm saying this is just the scenario in South Africa. So even if we don't follow any of the protocol, even if there's a violation of all prescripts, you're going to embarrass the country is going to be being embarrassed if you say, we're sending these Palestinians back. Oh, you guys fought for the Palestinians. Why you don't want them now? You understand? That's the tone. But essentially, the bigger question is, this is a threat to national security. This is a global nefarious agenda to depopulate Gaza took advantage of weakened security systems in your state apparatus and exploited it. And now you were at the back foot of having to now scramble, and there had to be a political decision to say, okay, we kept them on the tarmac for 12 hours. It doesn't make any sense. Get them in, process them, and then kind of be on alert. What happens when a boat of, fleeing an African war, I'm saying the phenomenon of human traffickers essentially profiteering of desperate victims of war is not a new thing. The fact that there's an effort to depopulate Gaza is not a new thing. But the fact that South Africa was so ripe for exploitation because of your bureaucratic failures is what makes it a very difficult scenario. Now South Africa says, no more flights, we're not accepting any of this, because they've asserted, and the minister said there's an investigation going on, but they believe that it's an effort to depopulate Gaza, and therefore they're not going to be complicit in allowing this thing to happen. And then it opens up a whole lot of side conversations about South Africa can't look after its own poor people, whites, and that's a conversation that no one must go into. But the most important thing is that was our security apparatus sleeping on the job, and
intelligence.
And I think that it was excusable on the first flight, not excusable by the second flight.
Okay, thank you for
was that a lot
insight. It was informative.
Okay,
it was informative.
I hope a little fun too.
Yeah, no, definitely. But that is also your personality. But no, thank you. We'll definitely reach out again, especially to see how the G20 how it's played out. And I guess we're going to see that this weekend.
Or the fact that we might have a different president by the end of the year. I'm not saying we're gonna. I'm saying people are talking about having a different president, which is so super interesting.
I don't think we will, but I mean, we'll see. And when that happens, in the next year...
Clip that.
But no, thank you once again.
Thank you very much.
Guys, You heard it yourself. Let us know what you think of the G20. Do you think it's going to be something that's going to impact our lived reality, or do you think it's another talk shop? Comment below. But before that, like, subscribe, share. Yeah, I got it all. Palatable Politics.